The thing about WrestleMania is that oftentimes it just gets reduced down to singular moments.
You know, like Hogan slamming Andre, Austin Bret Hart, the double turn, Rock and Hogan facing off, Daniel Bryan holding both titles in New Orleans, and Cody, of course, finishing his story, among many others.
But there were hours upon hours upon hours of other stuff happening that, well, most folks probably aren't going to remember.
Yeah, like the NFL versus WWF Battle Royal, the Gennifer Flowers thing. I don't even want to go into that. And Baron Corbin being part of Kurt Angle's retirement match don't leave fond memories in the hearts of wrestling fans. However, for WrestleMania to be a spectacle, they have a purpose.
Unless, of course, you happen to view WrestleMania as a wrestling event. In that case, you probably don't want to be inundated with Brutus the Barber Beefcake matches, backstage segments with the most unlikable Deadliest Catch captain there was, and Kid Rock mini concerts. That is the odd dichotomy of WrestleMania. Is it a spectacle with some wrestling mixed in? Is it a wrestling event that's mostly spectacle to draw in casual fans? Honestly, WWE wasn't really sure, at least until recently. Unlike, say, the Super Bowl, where the game is the game and cannot be changed, WrestleMania has a lot of flexibility on how its show is played out. The WWF come WWE has used that flexibility to dramatically alter how its marquee event plays out.
From stadium shows to the Rosemont Horizon, from 7-match cards to double-digit match marathons on 2-day extravaganzas, over the years, WrestleMania has transformed from a spectacle to a wrestling event and back again, before eventually morphing into both. How did we get here?
That is a very good and a very interesting question. And to answer that, I am Cheyenne Hollis from The Touchback.
And I'm Tim from Wrong Sports. And this is the special guest ref, where we're going to be talking about the transformation of WrestleMania over the years.
We start at the beginning, and as for WrestleManias 1 through 9, well, they were more spectacle than wrestling show.
Yeah, they were selling the sizzle and not the steak. Let's be honest, the early WrestleManias were really about Hulk Hogan, whoever Hulk Hogan was facing, any tag team partners, if applicable, and the random celebrities that were brought in, you know, like the Rockettes with Liberace and Muhammad Ali.
Now, there is some method to this madness. Wrestling, for its part, is still very much regionalized in the mid-1980s, and WrestleMania wanted to be this huge mainstream nationwide event. Is Adrian Adonis facing off against Uncle Elmer going to draw in casuals? Probably not. Mr. T, Muhammad Ali, Alice Cooper, Elvira, Bob Uecker, Mary Hart, among many, many others. Your mileage may vary in terms of interest, but this is a decision that made sense on the surface. However, the spectacle oftentimes distracted from what should have still been the main attraction. Professional wrestling. A lot of those early WrestleMania cards are littered with stupid matches with even dumber finishes. And really, a lot of that is because non-wrestling fans knew Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, and Randy Savage, but they weren't nearly invested in just about everyone else. Also, critically, around this time, we should mention that it's not like WWF has a roster full of guys capable of working matches 15 or more minutes, or even 10 or more minutes for most of them. No disrespect to wrestlers like Jake Roberts or the Big Boss Man, but sitting them out there for 15 minutes against the likes of Hercules Hernandez or Dino Bravo probably wasn't best for business. Occasionally, a tag team, the Rockers or the Hart Foundation would get 10 minutes or more to shine, and they often took advantage of that time, but those are the exceptions and not the rule. There's also another interesting trend we do need to touch on as it relates to the early WrestleManias. Pay-per-view, closed-circuit television is still a newish technology. VHS sales are very much a big deal for the Federation. In that regard, there was a desire to have quantity over quality. I mean, that is the American mindset. Like, we want more for less.
No, the big calling card for WrestleMania 4 was that it was 4 hours long, but it shifts a lot after WrestleMania 7 because runtimes will come down dramatically. And there is a lot less resilience on star power, especially after WrestleMania 10. It coincides with wrestling's larger decline around the times.
Things, they are changing, and WrestleMania is no different. The Federation was about to usher in a new era, and it would all begin at Madison Square Garden.
And yeah, WrestleMania 10 was awesome for me as a kid. Owen taking on Bret Hart to open WrestleMania 10 was an entirely different match from most everything seen at WrestleMania up to this point in time. Two outstanding wrestlers having a really good wrestling match to start. Then you had the ladder match for the undisputed Intercontinental title between Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels. Look, it wasn't a great card, and there were some odd celebrity cameos sprinkled in, looking at you, Hair Club for Men guy, but it did seem like a step in the right direction for wrestling fans.
Then WrestleMania 11 happens, and that is just a confusing, jumbled disaster of a card. It literally only seems to exist to bring in 1980s NFL fans. Seriously, this is not a wrestling event, nor was it a spectacle. It was just sort of a thing that happened, and we're all probably better off forgetting. WrestleManias 12 and 13 are better, but during this period, the event doesn't feel like a spectacle or even special. There wasn't much separating WrestleMania from your average pay-per-view around this time, and the run times for WrestleMania had come way down from 4, 5, or 6. Now, that is a good or bad thing depending on your viewpoint.
And 11 aside, the spectacle aspect of it was the huckster match, unfortunately.
Who you calling old, brother?
What did I just tell you guys?
There were a lot of fond memories when it comes to this era of WrestleManias, 14 through 18. But this is due in large part to the rose-tinted glasses that many folks were wearing when it comes to this era of WWE.
I'm not saying any of these WrestleManias are outright terrible. Actually, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to say it. WrestleMania 2000 was terrible. But I am saying these events aren't nearly as good as people are led to believe. These manias all boil down to a very simple formula. It was one really big match and in getting as much stuff on the card as humanly possible. It should also be noted around this time, celebrity guest spots start to become more frequent. Thankfully, these are a lot cooler than some of the previous WrestleMania celebrity guests. Overall, though, when you look at WrestleManias 14 through 18, they harken back to that formula used early on. There's a lot going on, but they are main event driven, or in the case of WrestleMania 13, Rock vs. Hogan driven. However, the main difference between this era of WrestleMania and the first era of WrestleMania is that each year a few matches on the card are given a little bit more time than you would realize. Now, the quality and choice of those matches that would get 12 or more minutes during the era varied quite a bit. There's one trend to note here as well. As the era progresses and things get a little less chaotic, as the Attitude Era slowly winds down, I think you see an uptick in quality. 14, 15, and WrestleMania 2000 are just a byproduct of the chaos that the Attitude Era was famous for. The issue is that chaos makes it really difficult to build well-rounded cards. You're just committed to the car crashes, and the stories sometimes fall by the wayside. The build-up is uneven at best. However, when you get WrestleMania 17 and 18, some of that chaos is still there, but overall they're more well-rounded. A little less throwing things at a wall and seeing what sticks. Of course, the fall of ECW and WCW meant that there really wasn't any competition for WWE. They didn't need to worry about grabbing in fans because they had no other option, if we're being honest. That would lead us to what many consider to be a golden era for WrestleMania.
With the Attitude Era in our rearview mirror and also the Invasion, thank goodness, gone away as well, we get to WrestleManias 19, 20, and 21, which were a trio of events that are pretty good and mostly wrestling focused.
The celebrity appearances are very much scaled back during this point in time, and the musical guests, the musical appearances, they make sense for the most part. Sure, these WrestleManias, like all WrestleManias, feature some stupid bits and a lot of throwaway matches mixed in.
Overall, though, these events have a common goal: letting the performers perform. This is a time of elevating guys to main event status and helping build the next wave of stars for the company. To that extent, it was extremely successful. In some ways, though, this is also the issue these WrestleManias have. While they are amongst some of the most well-rounded WrestleMania shows, 20 and 21 lack a true must-see main event. Even 19 feels like a collection effort. A major reason for this is the brand split. WWE is still fleshing this out, and you can kind of see it with these WrestleMania cards. Even though Raw was the so-called A show and got the last match for WrestleMania 20 and 21, SmackDown wasn't buried entirely, because a lot of people remember SmackDown for having the best matches on those WrestleMania cards. So there was a balancing act which led to these deeper cards, which are among the best in history. Do you like celebrities? How about celebrity matches? Well, too bad. You got them a lot during this run of WrestleMania. These were the manias. The celebrities and their matches were pushed way more than we needed. There was the Floyd Mayweather match versus Big Show. There was Snooki wrestling because WWE had to jump on her and her 10 minutes of fame. And then there is the Battle of the Billionaires. These matches were promoted as one of the top 2 or maybe even 3 matches at WrestleMania, and it took tons of time away from other better matches that took place or matches that would have taken place. The Snooki match was probably the least offensive one of the matches that I mentioned because it wasn't all up to her. It was a 6-person tag match, so you could keep her on the outside and only bring her in when needed, so she didn't mess up too much. And actually, she looked pretty good in it. Again, like the Trump and Mayweather editions, this Snooki match was given near top billing at the same level of Flair versus Michaels, which still infuriates me to this day.
Now, I do want to give WWE some credit as the resident Jersey Shore fan around here. Your infuriation aside, they really had their finger on the pulse by including the Jersey Shore in this WrestleMania. I fully understand why purists hate Snooki being placed in such a prominent position on a WrestleMania card. However, I think we can all agree that is still infinitely better than the Where's the Beef lady showing up a year after that ad campaign ends and not knowing how microphones worked.
And now the guest referees.
The capper to this group of manias and why the next group had to make up for these was the disaster of WrestleMania 27. It was all built around The Rock, who was hosting the event. He wasn't even wrestling. I know we were kind of used to The Rock showing up at that point and just showing up and saying hi and doing some jokes. But back in 2011, seeing The Rock show up was a really cool thing because it had been so long since we had saw him, and the rumors of his wrestling return were also pushed for this Mania. So that's why it got really big, but it was just a total disaster. And that was really the biggest thing going for WrestleMania 27.
Well, that and the match between Triple H and The Undertaker, a match being billed as one we had never really ever seen before. Of course, we had seen it in at WrestleMania nonetheless, WrestleMania 17. Now, the Triple H Undertaker match was seen more as a competition between Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Michaels to see who was going to have a better match at Mania. It was Michaels, and if we're being frank, it's not that close. The main event for WrestleMania 27 had a better hype package before the match than the actual match itself. That, of course, ended in disaster as Miz got a concussion and The Rock interfered with Cena to make him lose.
Yay, I hope we were all happy to spend $60 on a show that promoted the next year's show.
The Rock shows up at WrestleMania, and we really don't see him again until November.
And interestingly enough, The Rock still shows up whenever he wants to leading up to WrestleMania. And that's why WrestleMania's 28 to 30 are in some ways driving the storyline that leads up to the WrestleMania today.
I mean, think about it. Rock, Rollins, Cena, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, they were all having, well, various moments of success around this time. These events also move away from the gimmicky, celebrity-driven manias that preceded this. I mean, sure, The Rock at this point in time is definitely a celebrity. Bringing back the Ultimate Warrior for his Hall of Fame induction, that was a celebrity move of sorts. Kelly and Maria Menounos formed a tag team at some point for Mania. By and large, though, WrestleManias 28, 29, and 30 are wrestling events. Now, not all of that wrestling is good, mind you, and some of the decisions were certainly head-scratching, but compared to where things were the previous few years, this felt like a step in the right direction, the spiritual successors to Manias 19, 20, and 21. However, just like things went off the rails after those events, well, the good times were not going to last.
Yeah, because WrestleManias 31 through 35 are when Vince went back to the original WrestleMania thought process, in that he just wanted stars. Those stars were few since Undertaker was just a shell of himself since he lost his streak the previous year, and by this point he wasn't really having the matches that we needed to see like he used to have. Also, Shane McMahon was a star, only because the audience hadn't seen him in a while, but otherwise his matches were awful spectacles with gaudy stunts.
Okay. I am partially to blame for the Shane McMahon returning hype. I was so pumped when Shane McMahon returned because, well, quite frankly, WWE had nothing of interest going on. Then, within the first 5 minutes of that Hell in a Cell match, I was so out on Shane O'Mac. And then that damn match went on like another 20 minutes for no apparent reason, and the stakes ended up being meaningless as well. Speaking of a wrestler who is fond of lengthy matches, unnecessarily lengthy matches at that.
Yeah, that would be Triple H, who was still seen as a star, but like Undertaker, in that his matches were longer and even more boring than in years past and dragged down shows. One big example of this is Triple H versus Batista at WrestleMania 35, where he was trying to like rip his ear out of his head. That was disgusting. The only star on these shows and the guy that really helped to make these shows watchable was Brock Lesnar. But his matches were either great hits, like his match versus Goldberg, or they were horrible misses, like his match versus Dean Ambrose at WrestleMania 32.
WrestleMania 36 until now has gone through quite a few changes and many changes that fans and the company would see as positives. For starters, the event has been spread out over 2 nights. This not only allows the company to make double the money, but for fans, it offers double the fun, no twins or gum included.
Yeah, with the move to 2 nights, it's really helped the viewers. WrestleMania 34 was the real culprit, as it was a show that went past midnight. The main event started after midnight, and it left many people stranded outside the stadium for hours. And as someone that grew up only 3 miles from MetLife Stadium and knows how windy and cold it can be in March and April, I wouldn't want to be anyone who was stranded there. The 2-night WrestleManias have allowed us fans to not be tired by the time the main event comes around. And it also allows for better shows, probably because we don't have to be watching a marathon wrestling show.
In addition, the 2-night Mania allows for more matches on the show. The earlier Manias would have 10 or more matches, with WrestleMania 4 having some 16 bouts. This, of course, always led to issues with time. Some matches ran long, some matches would end up getting cut. It was always such a pain to schedule this out. It was really impossible, if we're being honest. One notable example was an 8-person intergender tag match between the Bellas and Funkadactyls was canceled due to other matches on that terrible card going so long. The match itself didn't need to be on the WrestleMania card, but WWE did spend a lot of time building up for this WrestleMania match, so to pull it entirely was kind of a shitty thing to do. There was another famous canceled match, the 10-man tag at WrestleMania 10. That, of course, was called off apparently because the ladder match went too long. I will be the first to admit I am happy the ladder match went 10 minutes longer than having this extra unnecessary match on the card. But at the same time, if you're billing for something to be at a WrestleMania, well, it should probably be there. This issue seems like a thing of the past when you now have 2 nights of WrestleMania. Canceled matches probably aren't going to happen. I mean, it's possible an injury or some unforeseen circumstances mean a match is called off or changed at the last minute. However, as far as like being short on time, well, that's not going to be an issue with 2 nights. More importantly, though, what this does is give matches more time to breathe. A lot of WrestleManias just see bouts where everyone's trying to get so much in such a short amount of time. Nothing connects. Fans get burned out. With the format over 2 nights, you just have the ability to have more of the roster not only be on the card, but show off their skills, especially when it comes to the women. There were some Manias where the women's entrances would go longer than the matches themselves. Like, remember that huge, massive Divas 10-person tag match at Mania 26? Where the entrances were just so long and the match was over in like half of the time. Perhaps more importantly though, the women aren't being relegated to some huge multi-person schmozz of a match or some lumberjack match where it's just let's cram as many women as we have into this really short match to say we did it. And now when you have more matches on WrestleMania, you're exposing more people to women's wrestling. They're getting a chance to showcase their abilities in front of a larger audience. It's a win-win for everyone involved.
We have surpassed 40 WrestleManias, and over the years, there have been a lot of change, and there will continue to be more change moving forward. So what's next for WrestleMania?
High ticket prices have certainly put a damper on WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas. With WWE no longer in the pay-per-view game, ticket sales and local tax breaks and other government incentives are the real driver for the event. 2 nights work when you're selling out the venue 2 nights in a row, and when you have the talent to fill 2 huge major cards that can bring in fans from around the world. But wrestling is cyclical. Product quality comes and goes, fan interest ebbs and flows. Nothing is permanent. If history is any indicator, WrestleMania will continue to evolve in ways none of us could have seen coming.
What about WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia? So there you go. That was our first video talking all about the transformation of WrestleMania. Thank you so much for checking this out. This is Special Guest Ref. I am Tim. That is Cheyenne. We like to talk about wrestling. We're going to continue to do this. So please subscribe to the channel below. Also, make sure you ring that bell because we're going to be dropping videos at random times. Really don't have a schedule. So yeah, ringing the bell is definitely a good idea. And you can also check out some more links that we have as well in the description below.
And hey, do you like sports or sports-related content, college football, things of that nature? Well, me and Tim both have sports-related channels. You can check him out over at Wrong Sports, covering some of the glorious highs and lows of college football from years gone by. And me, I just kind of do whatever the hell I feel like over at the Touchback. Check it out if you want or don't.
Thank you so much for watching Special Guest Ref. And just a reminder,
If Shawn Michaels is your special guest referee, well, those booty shorts are part of the package.